Good morning, everyone. Can you see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. So, yesterday we had discussed about the meaning of corporate governance, as well as we had discussed about the evolution of corporate governance. Today, we will be starting with what is the present structure of corporate governance in India, and then we will move on to role of corporate governance in India and scope of corporate governance. These two, three topics we will try to complete in today's session. So we will start with the corporate governance in India. What is the present scenario that we are going to discuss? It is a set on internal controls, policy, and procedure which form the framework of company's operation and its dealing with various stakeholders such as customers, management, employees, government, and industrial bodies. So yesterday we had discussed that it is the rules and regulation in simple words that help the company to run smoothly. Because of various scams, because of various frauds which has taken place after 1992, the government of India has set up various committees and on their recommendation continuously changes in the existing clauses of Companies Act, which takes care of all the dealings with company have been made. So what is the present situation is that every company, it is mandatory for every company to follow the corporate governance guidelines related to internal controls. Now, here, the internal control mainly focuses on the financial aspect. It is said that the financial department should work properly as per the guidelines laid down in the Act and mainly the Companies Act. There should be no manipulation in the figures of financial statements as well as the balance sheets prepared by the company. So we have learned from various scams and frauds that what are the do's and what are the don'ts for preparing the balance sheet or financial statements of any company. And now it has become mandatory that everything, whatever figures you are including in the financial statement or the balance sheet of the company, they have to be approved by the internal auditor as well as the external auditor. Then only you can publish your financial statement or the balance sheet of the company. So that is what the present situation is. The framework of such policy should be such to uphold the principle of transparency, integrity, ethics, and honesty. Now, this is a very exhaustive statement, very inclusive type of statement, which talks about transparency, integrity, ethics, and honesty. At present, it is expected that whenever the policies or guidelines or rules and regulations of any company is to be prepared, is to be changed, it is to be seen by the company that these guidelines, these policies are based on the principle of transparency, integrity, ethics, and honesty. Now, with transparency, we mean that whatever figures are mentioned in the balance sheet or financial statements of the company has to be correct. It should not be manipulated. That is what the transparency is. Whenever there is a doubt in the mind of stakeholders should have a easy access to these balance sheets and financial statements of the company. It should not happen that financial statements are prepared by the company and they are not easily accessible by all the stakeholders. With transparency, we mean that everything is transparent, right from preparation of financial statement till the disclosure of these financial statements in the common domain. That is called as transparency. When we talk about integrity, ethics, and honesty, these are the common principles which we all are aware of. When we talk about integrity and ethics, the company, whenever they are preparing the policies, they have to see to it that these policies shall not affect the interest of the employees or the other stakeholders of the company. It should not happen that company is preparing its policies, its strategies only to earn more profit, and more profit. And they are completely ignoring the interest of all the stakeholders who are associated with the company. That is not integrity and ethics. Integrity and ethics means that when you are giving equal importance to the profit of the company as well as to the interest of all the stakeholders of the company. If the company is earning profit, whether that profit is being shared with all the stakeholders or not, that is ethical. The company should not follow any unethical rule only for the sake of earning more profit. That is ethics. Honesty, we all are aware of that the officials, right from the top official to the other officials who are associated with the company, shall be honest with their work. Whatever they are doing should be correct, particularly whenever the company's financial health is disclosed with the other stakeholders. Now, every company wants that it should attract more and more investors. That every company wants. But honesty means that for attracting more investments, if you are making corrections in your financial statements, that is not honesty. That means you are fooling people by showing them wrong financial health of the company. And that is not honesty. So the present scenario or the present picture of the corporate governance in India, it talks about these four principles that all the policies, all the rules and regulations should be based on these four principles of transparency, integrity, ethics, and honesty. Next is corporate governance is the soul of an organization and must be adhered while indulging in any business practice. Again, it is the continuation of the earlier point that it is corporate governance is soul of the organization, the most important part of the organization. If the organization is not following the principles of corporate governance, that means the soul is not with the organization. The most important part is not doing what it is expected to do. So that is not expected. So as it is considered as corporate governance is considered as the most important part of the organization, it is expected that it should adhere all the guidelines, all the principles which are being laid down in the various uh, acts passed by the government. And that is the present corporate governance in India. Now we will move on to the scope of corporate governance. It talks about first, it talks about the preparation of companies' financial statement. Yesterday also and today also, we are discussing that the most important part in the corporate governance is financial part, because any person who is investing money in the company, the first thing he or she will be checking is the financial health of the company. How much profit the company has earned in last year, how much profit the company is earning for the last 3 years, what is the financial record of the company for the past uh, 5 years or maybe more. Every person who is investing in the company want to have a look at this financial aspect. That is the most important criteria for the shareholder to invest in the company. And that is why the first scope of corporate governance is related to preparation of companies' financial statements. In the second unit, when we will be talking about the various committees, which are statutory committees, which are compulsory committees, there we will be discussing the audit committee, which is considered as one of the most important committee under corporate governance. There we will be discussing in detail that how the audits are to be performed. There are guidelines given to the audit committee, which the audit committee has to follow. A very clear guideline. How the internal audits are to be done. How many times in a year internal audit is to be done? Who are the person who can do the internal audit? What should be the qualification of these people who can do the internal audit? At the same time, who are the people who can do the external audit? How many times the external audit can be done? That we are going to discuss in detail in the unit number 2. So now the scope is mainly concentrated towards how the company's financial statements are to be prepared. So first is preparation of company's financial statements. Who will be preparing the financial statements? Now one person has prepared the financial statement. Then who will be verifying that all the figures which are included in the financial statement are correct or not? Everything in detail has been mentioned in the audit committee. So that particular thing talks about that the preparation of company's financial statement. should be transparent, should be free from any defect. All the figures which are included in the financial statement are to be thoroughly checked and rechecked by the person who is preparing those reports. Then again, it is to be rechecked by the higher authorities, and then the audit takes place. Now, why all these checks are there? So these checks are there to remove any possibility of any error taking place while preparing or while including the figures in the financial statements. So that is the first scope. Now, the second point under the scope of corporate governance is internal controls and independence entities auditor. Internal control. So, internal control, in simple words, who will be controlling internally the preparation of preparation of financial statements. So, internal auditors, what are their role and responsibilities? That is included in the scope. Then, how the independence of entities auditor. Now, auditors plays a very important role. It is expected that they should not be in the control of the organization, because if they are controlled by the organization, they may not be in a position to highlight the irregularities that has taken place in the financial statements, because they are being paid by the organization. If they highlight such irregularities, there are more chances that they can be removed from the organization. To overcome this issue, the appointment or nomination of external auditor has become compulsory. And it is to be seen that these auditors should not be controlled by the organization. They are an independent entity who are engaged for the audit purpose. So they should not be directly or indirectly controlled by the organization. And the reason is, if they are independent, there are more chances that they will check the financial statements very thoroughly. And if any irregularity is there, if there is any mismatch in figures, the real figures as well as the figures which are included in the financial statements, immediately that can be brought to the notice of the organization, and a strict action can be taken against the person who is in who has been indulging in such activity, or who is responsible for these inclusion of these wrong figures. So that will take place only if the auditors are not in the control of the office. So that is very important. Next scope of corporate governance is review of compensation arrangement for chief executive officer and other senior executives. Now, very simple, that the scope of corporate governance also includes reviewing of compensation arrangements for chief executive officer and other senior executives. How much compensation, how much packages, how much salary, how much benefits, how much perquisites are to be given to the highest authorities, including the CEO and top executives, is included in the scope of the corporate governance. Now, for this particular point, earlier, for the above 2 points, that is preparation of financial statements and internal controls, There is a committee which takes care of that, and that committee is called as audit committee. Similarly, the compensation arrangement, it should not happen that if no such arrangements are there, if no such control is there, what will happen? It may happen that most of the profit is being shared by the top executive or CEO of the organization. Why? Because there is no such arrangement. So there is an arrangement. There is a committee which decides that what should be the package for the chief executive officer and what should be the packages for the highest uh, higher top officials of the company. And that committee is called as nomination and remuneration committee. Again, that committee is also statutory or compulsory committee. That also we are going to discuss in detail when we will be taking up our unit number 2. So the role of that committee is to check the eligibility of the director who is to be appointed at the board, as well as this particular committee also reviews and finalizes the compensation of top executives of the company. That is their role. So the scope of corporate governance includes the how much packages are to be paid. It is to be reviewed. It should not happen that once a package has been decided, that package will continue forever, or that package will continue for 5 years, 10 years, or maybe 15 years. Every year, the packages are to be reviewed, and it should be in par with the profit earned by the organization. If the organization is making profit, the packages can be increased. If the organization is making losses, the packages can be slashed. So that is the role of the nomination and remuneration committee. Next, the way in which individuals are nominated for the position on the board. That is what just we had discussed. So nomination and remuneration. So both these points are to be taken care by the nomination and the remuneration committee. Next is the resources made available to the director in carrying out their duties. Now, board of directors is considered as the highest body of any company, any organization. This is the body which is responsible for policy making decision, or we can say the most important policies, most important strategies of any company is to be prepared or is to be approved by the board of directors of that particular company. Now, to work smoothly, the board requires certain resources from the company because company's management is different and the board of director is different. Now, company management means the officials or the top executives who are involved in day-to-day business of the company. That is called as management. They are reporting on daily basis to the company. They are there for more than 8 hours in the company and they are doing their day-to-day activities required for smooth running of the company. So they are involved in everyday functioning of the company. Whereas board of directors are not involved in day-to-day functioning of the company. as it is the top body or topmost body, it is involved only in policy making or strategy making, or whenever very important decisions are to be taken up. Only then these this board of director is operational. So they are not involved in day-to-day functioning. They are not regularly coming to the organization and attending the board meeting. So resources should be made available for smooth functioning of the board means that whatever information is required for taking policy decisions, those information or that information should be provided to the board of directors well in time. That is known as that resources should be made available. It doesn't mean that AC cabin should be given to the board of directors for their meeting, or five-star lunch, breakfast, and dinner facility should be provided. Good quality of pen and diaries should be provided. That is not what we are talking about here. The resources should be made available. Here, by resources, what we mean is that for whenever they require, the board of directors require any information which they feel that this particular information is related to a policy, so that information should immediately be shared with the board of directors. And that is called as that resources should be made available to the directors for smooth carrying of their duties. And the last and the next point under the scope of corporate governance is oversight and management of risk. Oversight means controlling. Oversight means observing. Observing what? Seeing, overseeing what? Observing and overseeing that whatever principles, whatever policies are which are being prepared by the organization, whether the management of the company is implementing those policies or not. It should not happen that corporate governance has laid down certain principles. Now, those principles are accepted by the board of directors of a particular company. Now, these principles, which are approved by the board of director of the company, they are circulated to the management for implementation. It should not happen that management is delaying that implementation without any valid reason. If such thing happens, then management is responsible for that. And strict action can be taken against the officials who are responsible for delay in implementing those principles of corporate governance. And that is known as oversight or foreseeing. That the principles are fixed, principles are approved by the board of directors, and they are shared, they are given to the management for implementation. So it is the duty that it has to be implemented. And it is the duty of the board of directors to see to it that whatever they are giving to the management, whether it is being implemented or not. And the last one is management of risk. Now, what is management of risk? So, management of risk is that risk is to be managed. Now, how risk can be managed? We normally say that in any business, if you want to succeed, you have to take risk. Without risk, there cannot be success. That is a common saying. Then what is management of risk? Now, we should not take risk without calculation, because that risk will be called as blind risk. Before taking risk, if we do proper calculation, that are what are the advantages of if we take this particular risk, what will be the good points for the organization, what will be the